The grand chamber stretched out like a small planet, thousands of aliens from across the galaxy filled the seats that rose in circular tiers. Some had scales, others had fur, and some looked like they were made of light itself. In the center of it all stood three humans, looking very small and very alone. Kung Dun stood with his hands behind his back. His dark suit looked plain compared to the shimmering robes and armor worn by the other species. Next to him, Parkmere held a data pad, her fingers tight around its edges. Lee J.1 stood slightly behind them, his eyes scanning the crowd with the careful attention of someone trained to spot danger. High Arbiter Vel Nash rose from his seat. His scales were deep purple, and his eyes glowed with orange light. He was tall, perhaps 3 m, and when he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber without any microphone. We gather today for the centennial evaluation, Velesh announced. 50 cycles ago, we welcomed humanity into our council. Today we determine their place among us. Doyen felt every eye in the chamber turned toward him. He kept his face calm. A hologram appeared in the center of the room, showing Earth spinning slowly. Tumbers and data scrolled beside it. Humanity. Bell continued reading from a floating screen. Average lifespan 80 years. Technological level, basic fusion, no. Quantum processing, military capability, chemical propulsion, kinetic weapons. He paused, and something like amusement crossed his reptilian face. Still using projectile weapons in the age of plasma. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not cruel laughter, but the kind adults make when children do something silly. Mir's jaw tightened. Toyin put a hand on her arm, gentle but firm. Wait, the gesture said. Their history, Velash went on, is one of constant conflict. Wars over resources, land, beliefs. They have nearly destroyed themselves. Multiple times, he looked directly at Diane. Tell me, Ambassador, is it true? Your species created weapons capable of making your entire planet uninhabitable? Yes, Diane said simply. More murmurs filled the chamber. A being made of crystalline structures spoke up. And you used these weapons? Twice, Diane replied. We learned from it. Learned? Vel Nash's laugh was sharp. You learned not to completely destroy yourselves. How noble. He turned to the council. This is the species we are meant to trust with access to council space. They have barely stopped killing each other. Tall, thin alien with too many joints stood. The Terran did assist with the medical crisis on Yinton 5 with primitive vaccines. Another alien added. Technology we abandoned centuries ago. But it worked, the thin alien insisted. Bell waved a clawed hand. It worked. Because the Yinton strain was equally primitive. We are not here to debate their occasional usefulness. We are here to establish their rank. The voting began. It was not a simple process. Each species had representatives who consulted data, argued in languages humans couldn't understand, and finally submitted their assessments. Doyen watched it all with the same calm expression. Me kept glancing at him, wondering how he could stand there so still while they tore humanity apart. Finally, Velnesh returned to his position. The council has decided, out of 847 recognized civilizations, humanity is ranked number 841. The number appeared in the hologram. Glowing red. Classy status. Velash continued with the following restrictions: trade limited to basic goods only, no military vessels beyond Your home system, all colony worlds must have council supervisors, no access to quantum networks or advanced medical technology, understood, Doyen said. Velesh seemed disappointed by the lack of reaction. You accept these terms. Without protest, we accept the council's decision, Doyen replied. How refreshing. Belsh's tone made it clear he meant the opposite. Before we conclude, do you have any matters to bring before the council? Yes, Doyen said. He nodded to me, who activated a new hologram. It showed a sector of space far from council territory. Sector 9, Diane explained. Our long-range probes detected unusual activity 3 months ago. Energy signatures that don't match any known species, movement patterns suggesting organized fleets. Felnash barely glanced at the data. Sector 9 is beyond council space. Whatever lives there is not our concern. We believe they're moving this direction, Mira added, her voice steady. Despite the tension, the pattern suggests your primitive probes likely malfunctioned. An alien with multiple heads interrupted. Our sensors show nothing. Perhaps they're looking for different things, Diane suggested. Carefully. Are you implying council technology is inferior to human equipment? Velesh asked, his voice dangerously soft. Not inferior, Diane said. Different. Humans have been in space for barely 2 centuries, Nash said. We have explored the galaxy for thousands of years. If there were a threat in Sector 9, we would know. He closed the hologram with a gesture. Your warning is noted and dismissed. Doyen bowed his head slightly. Thank you for your time. As the council session ended and aliens began filing out, Juwan leaned close to Diane. He's going to regret that. Probably, Doyen agreed quietly. Me clutched her data pad tighter. They didn't even look at the data. 3 months of scanning, and they didn't even look. They looked, Diane said. They just didn't see. They walked through the massive corridors of the council station. Aliens passed them, some nodding politely, others pretending the humans didn't exist. A few gave looks that might have been pity. In one alcove, Doyen noticed 3 aliens watching them. They were different species, but they all wore similar expressions. Concern maybe, or recognition. One of them, covered in blue-green fur, stepped forward. Ambassador, she said in heavily accented but understandable Korean, I am Counselor Mirishan. My people were once ranked low as well. Where Myra asked, we proved ourselves in combat, Mirishan said, against the plague ships 400 years ago. The council learned to respect us. She paused. Your warning about Sector 9. My people's archives contain similar stories. Before disasters there are always warnings, and there are always those too proud to listen. What happened to those people? J1 asked. Mirishan's fur rippled in what might have been a shrug. They learned or they died. She bowed her head. Safe travels, humans. I suspect we will speak again soon. As she walked away, Mary turned to Diane. She believes us. A few of them do, Diane said. Did you see the trail representatives? They abstained from voting. Fat lot of good that does us. Me muttered. They reached their ship, a blocky vessel that looked crude next to the sleek alien craft. Inside, Doyle finally allowed himself to relax. He sat in the captain's chair and closed his eyes. You're not upset, Jan observed. I'm furious, Diane said calmly, but anger clouds judgment. What do we do now? Myra asked. Doyen opened his eyes. We go home. We report to Earth and we prepare, for what for? Them to be wrong about Sector 9, Doyen said, and for the day they realized they were wrong about us, the ship pulled away from the station, its primitive engines burning bright against the stars. Behind them the Galactic Council continued its business, secure in its rankings and decisions. None of them knew that in Sector 9, something ancient and hungry had just noticed the glow of Council space, and it had begun to move. 3 months had passed since the ranking ceremony. Joy Hyan Wu guided his freighter through the dark between stars, hauling mining equipment to human colony on Threshold 7. The ship was old, built 30 years ago on Earth, and everything in it required hands-on control, no fancy computer to fly for him, just switches, levers, and good old-fashioned piloting. Another 12 hours to Threshold, his co-pilot said, checking a paper chart, actual paper, because the navigation computer had died 2 years ago and replacement parts cost more than the ship was worth. Hyan Wu didn't mind. He'd flown Marines during the Pacific Defense Crisis. He knew how to navigate by stars and math. Get some sleep, he told the co-pilot. I'll take first watch. On Threshold 7, Yun Sarah was finishing her shift at the Colony Medical Center. The building was simple. Prefabricated walls and basic equipment, nothing like the fancy hospitals back on Earth, and certainly nothing like the advanced medical bays she'd seen on Council stations. She checked on her last patient, a miner who'd broken his arm in a cave-in. The bone was set with titanium pins, and he was recovering well. Simple, effective, old-fashioned medicine. Doc, the miner said, is it true the Council thinks we're primitive? Sarah smiled as she updated his chart. They rank us pretty low. Yeah, but you saved my arm. The Council medic said it couldn't be done, that I'd need a regenerator. Regenerators are great, Sarah agreed, when they work, but a pin and some screws work too, and they don't need quantum processors. She patted his good shoulder. Get some rest. You'll be back to work in 6 weeks. Jamino sat in his office at the Colony Administration building, reviewing supply reports. Threshold 7 was home to 8,000 humans, all of them mining rare minerals from the planet's crust. It was hard work, dangerous work, but it paid well. Message came through on his radio, not the fancy quantum communicator the Council had offered to install, but an old FM radio system. It was slower, sure, but it never broke down, and there were no subscription fees. Administrator Minu, this is Perimeter Station 3. We got something weird on radar. Minu picked up the handset. Define weird ships maybe, but they're not broadcasting any identification, and they're moving wrong. Wrong how? Like they're drifting, but also on purpose. Hard to explain. Minu pulled up the radar feed on his monitor. The screen was black and green, simple graphics that showed dots moving across a grid. He saw what the perimeter station meant. 3 contacts moving in a pattern that seemed random but also coordinated. Send a greeting on all frequencies. Minu ordered. Standard Council protocol. They waited. No response. Try again, Minu said. Something cold was forming in his stomach. Still nothing. Then the radar lit up with new contacts, dozens of them appearing from nowhere. They spread out in a perfect circle around the colony. Get Sarah to the shelter, Minu said. Into the radio now, and spin up the defense grid. The defense grid was simple. 6 old missile batteries from Earth's last war, retrofitted for space use. They required manual targeting, manual firing, and manual reloading. Council had laughed when they saw it. During an inspection, who uses missiles? In space combat, humans did because missiles didn't need fancy targeting. Computers, the ships dropped into orbit. They were strange, organic-looking. Covered in what looked like wet skin, no lights, no windows, just dark shapes. Against the stars, one of them fired. The blast tore through the colonies. Power station, cutting electricity too. Half the settlement, all personnel too. Shelters mean you broadcast, this is not a drill. The missiles launch streaking up from their batteries with bright flames. 3 of them hit the nearest ship, punching through its hull. It spun away, leaking atmosphere, but there were dozens more across the galaxy. On the Council station, alarms were screaming. High Arbiter Velnesh rushed into the command center, his robes tangled around his legs. What's happening? Attacks. A technician reported, her voice shaking. 17 colonies across 8 sectors all at once. What kind of attacks? Pirates, unknown species. Another technician said, they're jamming our communications, disabling our defense networks. Velash stared at the screens. Ships were blinking out of existence as they fell under attack. Deploy the defense fleet, all available ships. We're trying, the first technician said, but our AI systems are being compromised. The ships won't respond to commands. That's impossible. Velash said, our systems have quantum encryption. Nothing can break it. These things are breaking it, the technician insisted. On another screen, a council warship appeared. It was massive, bristling with plasma cannons and shield generators. It moved to engage the attacking ships, and then suddenly it turned. Its weapons fired at a council station instead. What is it doing? Felnash shouted. The ship's AI has been corrupted. Someone said it's attacking us. Back on Threshold 7, High Wu and LT Unk and GT's freighter dropped out of faster than light travel and immediately saw the chaos. Ships swarming the colony, explosions lighting up the night side of the planet. We need to run, his co-pilot said. Yan Wu looked at the scanner, his old simple scanner that showed basic blips and nothing else. There are people down there. We're a freighter. We can't fight. We can try. Yan Wu grabbed the controls. The ship responded instantly. No computer lag, no AI to override him, just direct mechanical linkage from his hands to the engines. He dove toward the planet, pushing the old ship as fast as it would go. One of the enemy ships noticed and turned to intercept. It fired something that looked like living electricity. The blast hit shields, and every electronic system on the ship sparked and died. Screens went black, lights went out. Even the backup computer shut down, but the engines kept running. The mechanical controls still worked, and Han Wu could still see out the window. Manual control only, he announced, just like training. He flew by instinct, using the planet's gravity to sling him around and into the enemy ship's path. At the last moment, he fired the cargo clamps, the simple mechanical devices meant for grabbing shipping containers. The clamps caught the enemy ship's hull and held. Yan Wu reversed thrust, and his freighters' massive engines dragged the enemy ship down toward the atmosphere. What are you doing? The co-pilot screamed. What we do best, Yan Wu said, being unpredictable. The enemy ship thrashed trying to break free, but the clamps were solid steel and they held. Both ships hit the atmosphere, heat building around them. Hai and Wu released the clamps at the last moment, and the enemy ship tumbled away, breaking apart as it fell. His freighter pulled up, groaning and burning but intact. He sat down at the colony's landing pad where Minyu was coordinating the defense. "You're insane," Minyu said as Han Wu climbed out. "That's what my ex-wife said too." Hai and Wu replied, "What do you need?" "Everything. They've taken out our power grid, our water pumps. I've got tools, spare parts, and a very stubborn attitude," Hai and Wu said. "Let's get to work." In orbit, a council ship appeared. It was damaged, listing to one side. Sarah's medical center received an emergency transmission. "This is Council medical ship Brightness. We are under attack. Our systems are failing. Requesting immediate assistance." Sarah looked at the radio. "This is Threshold 7. Medical will help if we can, but we're under attack too. Can you land?" And GT, negative. Our pilot AI is compromised. We cannot control the ship." Sarah thought fast. "Do you have manual controls?" "Backup systems manual? No, all systems are integrated with the AI." Of course they were. Who needed manual controls when AI was perfect? "Okay." Sarah said, "I'm coming to you. Hold on." She ran to the landing pad where Hai and Wu's freighter sat. "I need a ride." "Where?" "Up there." She pointed at the dying council ship. Hai and Wu grinned. "You're as crazy as I am. I like it." They launched with no plan except to help. The freighter had no weapons, no shields left, just engines and hope. The council ship was easy to find. It was bleeding. Atmosphere spinning slowly. Enemy ship circled it like sharks. Hai and Wu flew straight at them, using the freighter like a battering ram. He clipped one enemy ship, sending it tumbling. Another fired, but the blast went wide. They docked with the council ship using old-fashioned magnetic clamps. Sarah grabbed her medical bag and headed through the airlock. Inside she found chaos. Aliens lay injured, their advanced medical systems sparking and failing. The ship's doctor, a being with 4 arms and crystal skin, looked at her with desperate eyes. "Help us. Our nano-medicine has turned against us. It's attacking our patients." Sarah opened her bag. Inside were bandages, antiseptic, surgical tools, simple things, old things. "I can't promise anything fancy," she said, "but I can stop bleeding and set bones. Show me who's worst." She worked for hours using techniques that were centuries old. Stitches instead of laser sealing, pressure bandages instead of force fields, chemical painkillers instead of neural blocks. And slowly the patient stabilized. Back on the council station, Vel Nash watched the reports come in. Colonies falling, ships lost, defenses failing. Then a message appeared, text only, from Threshold 7, Threshold Colony holding. Enemy ships driven off, council ship Brightness secured and stabilized. No advanced technology used. Requesting instructions. Felnash read it 3 times. Class E species had done what the Council's best ships couldn't. They'd fought off the attackers and saved lives, using tools the Council considered obsolete. Admiral Xiang Yunho stood on the bridge of the carrier, indomitable, watching the stars through actual windows, not screens, not holograms, but real glass that showed real space around him. Crew members worked at stations with physical switches and dials. The ship hummed with the sound of mechanical systems. All of them responding directly to human hands. Fleet status, Yunho said quietly. All ships ready, his executive officer reported. 342 vessels, carriers, destroyers, frigates, and support craft. And they all think we're just haulers and colony ships, Yunho said with a slight smile. The council never asked what we were hauling, the officer replied. Yunho nodded. The council had restricted humanity to non-military vessels, but they'd never defined what made a vessel military, so humans built ships that could carry cargo, transport colonists, and when necessary, transform into warships. Every freighter had hidden weapon bays, every colony ship carried Marine battalions, every civilian transport could launch fighters. The council had seen what they expected to see: primitive human ships beneath there. Notice, open channel to the fleet, Yunho ordered. All frequencies, radio, laser, link, and signal flags if they can see them. The communications officer, a young woman named Kim Hijin, worked her console channel open. Sir, this is Admiral Yunho to all vessels. You know why we're here. The council needs help, whether they want to admit it or not. These attackers use technology that turns advanced systems against themselves, but they can't hack a mechanical switch. They can't corrupt a human brain. We fight the old way today. Manual controls, visual targeting, and human judgment make every shot count. Hunho out. Across the fleet, captains acknowledge the order. No fancy quantum communications, just radio waves and light signals, the same technology humans had used for centuries. Dr. Beck Juen sat in the weapons lab aboard Indomitable, making final checks on the armaments. She was small with short hair and glasses that were always slightly crooked. Her colleagues called her brilliant. Her enemies called her terrifying. She preferred the second description. How are my babies? Hunho asked, entering the lab, armed and ready to cause problems. Jian replied cheerfully. She patted a missile that was as long as she was tall. This is the Harbinger Mark 7 chemical explosive. Kinetic penetrator, no electronics, except a simple timer. Once it's fired, nothing can hack it. It just flies straight and hits hard. The council banned kinetic weapons in Warfare 300 years ago. Hunho said, good thing we're classy and not bound by their military treaties. Juen said, also these. She showed him a crate of what looked like metal balls, flesh mines. We scatter them in space. They drift like debris. And when a ship gets close, a mechanical trigger releases thousands of metal needle. No computers, no signals, just springs and bad luck for whoever hits them. You're enjoying this too much, Yunho said. Juen's grin was sharp. They laughed at our weapons, called them primitive. Today they're going to learn why humans kept improving things that go boom. Commander Hantun gathered his special operations team in the hangar bay, 50 men and women, all wearing heavy armor that looked ancient compared to the council's sleek combat suits. But their armor had no electronics to corrupt, just plates of ceramic and steel sealed against vacuum. Listen up, Tijun said, his voice calm despite what they were about to do. We're boarding enemy ships. The council can't do it because these things corrupt their suits, their weapons, everything. But we've got gear so old there's nothing to corrupt. He held up his rifle. This fires bullets, actual metal bullets, pushed by exploding powder. I know, very primitive, but it works in vacuum, works in atmosphere, and it Works when every computer in the galaxy is trying to kill you, the team checked. Their equipment, rifles, pistols, knives, explosives, not a computer chip. Among them, except for simple radio headsets that could be thrown away if compromised. Our mission is to board, disable enemy vessels, and gather intelligence. T-Jun continued, we do this the hard way, no teleporters, no shields, just us and them. Questions. Young Marine raised her hand. Sir, how do we get aboard their ships? Tun smiled. We're going to use boarding pods. Just like Marines did 400 years ago, we fire ourselves at them in metal tubes and cut our way inside. The Marine's eyes widened. That's insane. That's humanity. Tai replied. The fleet dropped out of faster than light travel near the Council Station. The sight that greeted them was chaos. Council ships drifted in pieces, defense platforms burned. The strange enemy ships swarmed like insects, their organic-looking hulls pulsing with sickly light. Count Yunho asked, over 200 enemy contacts, Hijin reported. Council forces are scattered. They're trying to retreat. Signal the Council. Yunho ordered. Tell them help has arrived, and tell their ships to get clear. We're about to make things messy. Belnash received the message in the command center. Human fleet detected. 300 plus vessels. They're requesting Council ships withdraw from combat. 300. Belnas couldn't believe it. Where did they get 300 warships? They say they're not warships, the technician reported. They're registered as cargo vessels. On the view screen, the human fleet spread out in a formation that looked almost casual, no perfect military precision. Just ships moving like a school of fish. Each one independent but somehow coordinated. The enemy ships turned to face this new threat. They fired their corrupting weapons, bolts of living electricity that had disabled every Council ship they touched. The blasts hit the human ships, systems sparked and failed, computers died, screens went black, and the human ships kept coming. They're not stopping, Velash said. Why aren't they stopping? Because we don't need computers to fly, a human voice said over the open channel. It was Admiral Yunho. We've got hands, eyes, and several thousand years of experience fighting in ships that want to kill us. Today's no different. The human fleet opened fire. Missiles streaked out, hundreds of them, each one a simple metal tube full of explosives. The enemy ships tried to intercept them with their corrupting beams, but the missiles had no computers to corrupt. They just flew and exploded. Enemy ships burst apart, torn open by weapons the Council considered obsolete. They're using kinetic weapons, Nash said, horrified and amazed at the same time. Of course they are, someone muttered. They're humans. Taeyeon's boarding pod launched from Indomitable along with 20 others. They were simple tubes, really, with engines on one end and a cutting torch on the other. Inside, Tunin and his team held on to straps, feeling every shake and rattle. 30 seconds to impact. Someone counted down. The pod hit an enemy ship's hull, and immediately the torch began cutting. Molten metal sprayed around them. Then they were through, and the pod's front blew open. Tun led the way into the enemy ship. It was dark inside, wet, and it smelled wrong. The walls pulsed like living tissue. Something moved in the darkness. Taunan raised his rifle and fired. The bullet tore through whatever it was, and it fell. Spread out, he ordered. Map this ship, find out what makes it work. They moved through the corridors Encountering the enemy crew, they were strange beings, half organic and half machine, but not in a way that made sense. The machine parts looked infected, corrupted, forced into flesh. That rejected them. When the team tried to shoot them with energy weapons, the bolts curved away, absorbed by some field, but bullets flew straight and true. Old-fashioned steel didn't care about exotic physics. They found what looked like a control center. Strain symbols covered the walls, and in the center was something that might have been a computer or might have been a living brain. It was hard to tell. Jiwon is going to love this, T-Jun said. He planted charges around the room. Team fall back to the pod. They retreated, fighting their way back. Enemy seemed confused by the humans. Their weapons were designed to corrupt technology, but humans didn't rely on technology the same way. They relied on themselves. The charges blew and the enemy ship shuddered. Tun's team made it back to their pod and launched, returning to Indomitable just as the enemy ship began to break apart. Back on the Indomitable's bridge, Yunho watched the battle develop. The Council had fought with elegant tactics, using AI to coordinate movements and calculate optimal strategies. It hadn't worked. The enemy had turned those advantages against them, so Yunho fought the ugly way. He sent ships in random patterns. He used hand signals and colored lights to coordinate attacks. He made decisions based on gut feeling rather than computer calculations, and it worked. The enemy couldn't predict human tactics because humans themselves didn't know what they were doing until they did it. Every captain made their own decisions. Every gunner fired when they thought it was right. It was chaos, but it was human chaos, and the enemy couldn't adapt to it. Nam Yoonji flew her fighter through the battle, rolling and diving, with no computer assistance, just her hands on the stick and her eyes tracking targets. She was one of the best pilots in the fleet, and she flew like she was dancing. An enemy ship appeared in front of her. It was massive, clearly some kind of command vessel. It began charging a weapon that made the space around it shimmer. Yoonji made a decision. She armed her fighters self-destruct and pointed the nose at the enemy ship. The council chamber had been damaged in the attack. Walls showed blast marks, and some of the seats were empty because those species had lost their representatives. Temporary lights hung from cables, and the air smelled like smoke and fear, but the council had gathered anyway because they needed to understand what had happened. Researcher Imogen stood before them, uncomfortable. In the formal setting, she was an academic, not a diplomat. She wore simple clothes and her hair was pulled back in a practical bun. Behind her screen showed images from Earth's history. You asked me to explain human military effectiveness. Sujin began to do that. I need to give you context you won't like. Vel Nash, his scales still showing scorch marks from when he'd barely escaped an exploding corridor, nodded. We're listening. Sujin pulled up an image of Earth. This is our planet. One species, one world. Most of you came from worlds where one species dominated completely, where evolution created a single intelligent race. She paused. Earth wasn't like that. The image changed to show different groups of humans. Modern humans had to compete with at least 3 other human species. We didn't just survive, we outlasted them all. We're what's left after thousands of generations of competition. An alien with multiple eyes raised a hand, but all intelligent species face competition in their evolution, not like we did, Sujin replied. Your species faced predators, environmental challenges, resource scarcity. We faced all that plus something worse. We faced each other. The screen showed a map of Earth covered in colored sections. Recorded human history spans about 10,000 years. In that time there were approximately 14,000 wars, major ones. Not counting small conflicts, that's more than one war starting every somewhere on the planet. The chamber went silent. That can't be right. Someone said, how did you survive? By getting very, very good at killing each other, Sujin said flatly. And then, eventually getting good at not killing each other, but the skills remained. She showed images of ancient weapons, stone axes, bronze swords, iron spears. We've been making weapons for so long, we can't even determine when it started. Every material we discovered, we weaponized: stone, metal, chemicals, atoms, information, everything. But surely as you advanced, you moved past such violence, an alien suggested. Hopefully, Sujin laughed, and it wasn't a happy sound. We moved past using it constantly. We didn't move past being capable of it. She pulled up new images. 200 years ago, we split atoms. Within 3 years, we turned that discovery into bombs. We used them twice on ourselves. The screen showed mushroom clouds, cities destroyed, people suffering. When we realized what we'd done, Sujin continued, we didn't stop making nuclear weapons. We made more, bigger ones, enough to destroy our whole planet. Several times over. We called it mutual assured destruction. The idea was simple: if anyone attacked, everyone would die. That's insane, Balash said quietly. Yes, Sujin agreed, but it worked. We haven't had a major global war since. Instead, we had hundreds of smaller ones. We fought in jungles, deserts, cities, and mountains. We tested every weapon, every tactic, every strategy. We learned. She pulled up footage of human soldiers in various time periods. You asked why our weapons are so primitive. They're not primitive, they're proven. Bullet works because physics says it. Works not because a computer says it. Works. A knife kills because it's sharp, not because it's connected to a network. We trust these things because they've never failed us, Captain Odin stood. When Sujin asked for examples of human combat doctrine, he was older, maybe 50, with gray in his hair and scars on his hands. I commanded a destroyer during the battle, Dehan said to the council. You want to know how humans fight? I'll tell you. He stood straight, military posture. We were engaging 3 enemy ships. They were bigger, faster, and had weapons that destroyed our sensors. Command asked for volunteers for a close assault. My entire crew raised their hands, all of them. An alien asked. Surely some wanted to survive. Of course we wanted to survive, Dayan said, but we wanted to win more. So I picked 20 crew members and we took a small shuttle toward the enemy ships. No weapons, no shield, just explosives and determination. He gestured to his arm, which was bandaged. They shot us up pretty bad. Killed 8 of us before we even reached them, but the rest of us got aboard. We set charges on their power cores and blew our way back out. Lost 4 more in the escape. For what purpose? Bell asked. Your ship could have retreated. If we retreated, they'd chase us to the next colony, Day said simply. Better to end it there. 8 people gave their lives so thousands could live. We think that's a fair trade. The silence in the chamber was heavy. You think dying for others is fair? Someone asked. We think it's necessary, Dehan replied. You don't. That's the difference between us. Juan arrived at the council station with crates of captured enemy technology. She set up in a temporary lab and immediately began taking things apart. Council scientists watched, horrified and fascinated. This, Juan said, holding up something that looked like a crystal merged with flesh, is how they corrupted your systems. It's not really technology and not really biology. It exists in both states simultaneously. Can we defend against it? A council scientist asked. You can't, Juan said. Your systems are too integrated. Everything connects to everything else in your technology. When this infects one part, it spreads to everything. She set it down carefully. But there's good news. What? Humans? Separate systems. Our weapons don't connect to our life support, which doesn't connect to our engines. If one system fails, the others keep working. We learned to do this after our computers started getting viruses 800 years ago. She pulled up a diagram of a human ship next to a council ship. Look at the difference. Your ship is elegant, efficient, everything working together. Our ship is messy, redundant, with backups for the backups. You optimized for peace. We optimized for things going wrong. That seems paranoid, someone observed. It's only paranoia if they're not actually out to get you, Juan replied. And as we just learned, someone is always out to get you. She showed them human weapons. You asked why we still use explosives and kinetics. Because they're reliable. This missile has 3 ways to detonate: electronic, mechanical, and chemical. If the electronics fail, the mechanical trigger works. If that fails, the chemicals will eventually decay and explode anyway. It will accomplish its mission one way or another. That's excessive, someone said. No, G1 corrected. That's prepared. Excessive is what we do when we're really worried. She smiled, and it made several aliens step back. Want to see our contingency weapons? Late that night, Velesh found himself in the station's observation deck. The stars looked the same as always, but he felt different looking at them. Kong. Diane entered quietly and stood beside him. You wanted to speak with me? Down asked. I wanted to apologize, Velesh said, for underestimating your people, for dismissing your warnings. Apology accepted. Just like that. Doyen shrugged. You were wrong, you admitted it. What more is there? Velesh turned to look at the human. Your people died in that battle, hundreds of them. Don't you feel anger toward us? We caused this by not listening. Anger doesn't help anyone, Doyen said. And yes, we lost people. We always do. That's what happens in war. But you're not at war. You were just helping us. We always at war, Doyen said quietly. Sometimes with enemies, sometimes with nature, sometimes with ourselves. War is what we know. Peace is what we hope for. Bell Nash was quiet for a long moment. The council is afraid of you now. You know that, right? They saw what humans can do. Good, Diane said. Fear leads to respect. Respect leads to being heard. Maybe next time we warn you about something, you'll listen. There will be a next time. There's always a next time. Doyen looked out at the stars. Galaxy is big. There are things out there we haven't met yet. Some will be peaceful, some won't. That's just how it is. How do you live with that? Always expecting danger. How do you live Without expecting it, Doi encountered. Your people built a beautiful civilization, peaceful, advanced, harmonious, but you forgot that peace is something you have to maintain, not something that just exists. Velnash thought about his own world where the biggest conflicts were political debates, where weapons were historical, curiosities were the idea of citizens. Volunteering to die for strangers was unthinkable. We've grown soft, he said. No, Diane corrected gently, you've grown comfortable. There's a difference. Soft means weak, comfortable means you've created something worth protecting. The problem is you forgot you might need to protect it, and humans never forgot. We can't forget. It's in our history, our culture, our stories. Every human child grows up hearing about heroes who sacrificed everything, warriors who stood against impossible odds, normal people who did extraordinary things when necessary. Doyen smiled sadly. We make sure each generation knows what came before, what was survived, what was learned. Belknap looked at the human standing beside him, not tall, not physically impressive, wearing simple clothes, but inside that ordinary appearance was something that had terrified the council. What are you? He asked. Doyen considered the question. We're survivors, we're builders. 6 months had passed since the battle. The council station had been repaired, though some scars remained as reminders. The grand chamber looked much as it had before, but the atmosphere was different. There was less certainty in the air, less absolute confidence. Kang Doyen walked through corridors that were now familiar. Aliens nodded to him as he passed, some with respect, some with weariness, and a few with something that might have been fear. He didn't particularly enjoy any of those reactions, but he understood them. The emergency council session had been called to discuss humanity's status again, but this time the conversation would be very different. Diane entered the chamber with Park Myra and Lee Jae-won. Admiral Song Yun-ho was there, too, standing straight in his uniform. Dr. Baek Ji-won had come, though she looked uncomfortable in formal clothes. She kept fidgeting with her collar. The chamber was full. Every species had sent representatives. Some had sent more than usual, as if numbers would help them understand what humans were. High Arbiter Velnash called the session to order. He looked older than he had 6 months ago. The attack had aged everyone who survived it. We gathered to discuss humanity's classification. Balash began. In light of recent events, the Council has reconsidered its previous assessment. A hologram appeared showing humanity's rank 841 out of 847. Then the number began to change, climbing rapidly. 800, 700, 500. It kept going. The council proposes elevating humanity to class A status. Belnash announced rank 23 overall, full military rights, unrestricted trade, council, military coordination authority, and a seat on the security committee. Murmurs filled the chamber. Class A was reserved for the oldest, most advanced civilization, species with thousands of years of spacefaring history. Humanity had barely been in space for 2 centuries. We also propose, Velesh continued, appointing human advisors to council military forces. Your tactical knowledge and combat experience would be valuable. Doyen stood slowly. We appreciate the council's recognition. But Velesh asked, hearing the unspoken word, but we decline. The chamber erupted. Aliens stood shouting in Various languages. Velnash raised his hand for silence, and eventually the noise subsided. You decline Class A status? Velnash asked, clearly confused. This is the highest honor the Council can offer. I understand that, Diane said calmly, and we're grateful, but we prefer to remain Class E. That makes no sense, someone shouted. You proved yourselves, you saved us. Exactly, Duyan replied. We saved you because you underestimated us. Because you didn't see us as a threat. If we become Class A, everyone will watch us, everyone will study us, everyone will prepare for us. Mary stepped forward. We'd rather be underestimated than overestimated. It's safer for everyone, safer for you. You mean? An alien accused. No, Yunho said, his voice carrying across the chamber. Safer for you. If you elevate us, other species will see us as a threat. They'll build weapons to counter us. They'll develop tactics to fight us, and then we'll have to develop counter measures. It becomes an arms race, and nobody wins those, Chuan added. Plus, if we're Class A, you'll expect us to follow Class A rules, military conduct, weapons restrictions, tactical doctrine. We don't want that. We like our chaos. This is unprecedented, Nash said. Species fight for higher classification. You're the first to refuse it. We're the first for a lot of things, Dian said. With a slight smile, we'd like to propose a compromise. What compromise? Keep us as Class E, Doyen said, but remove some restrictions. Let us trade freely, let our colonies operate independently, and give us defensive authority, Velnash repeated. If we detect a threat, we can respond without waiting for council approval, Doyen explained. We keep our Class E rank, which makes us look harmless, but we have the freedom to help when needed. The council debated for hours. Some species argued that humanity deserved higher rank. Others worried about giving humans too much freedom. A few suggested that humans were playing a clever game, appearing weak while gaining power. They were right about that last part, but Doyen didn't say so. Finally, a vote was called. The compromise passed, though not unanimously. Humanity would remain Class E, but with expanded rights and defensive authority. There's one more thing, Nash said as the session was ending. The human advisory program. Even if you're not Class A, we'd like human military advisors assigned to council forces to teach us what you know. Doyen looked at Yunho, who nodded slightly. We can do that, Diane agreed, but understand what we teach might be uncomfortable. Human military doctrine is built on assumptions you don't share. What assumptions? Someone asked. That everything can fail, Yunho said. That allies can become enemies. That today's weapon might not work tomorrow. That peace is temporary and war is always possible. That sounds exhausting, an alien observed. It is, Yunho admitted. But it's also why we're still here. After the session, Velnash asked to speak with Down privately. They walked to the observation deck, the same place they'd talked months before. You manipulated the council, Balash said. But there was no anger in his voice, just tired resignation. We told the truth, Diane replied. That's not manipulation. You knew we'd offer Class a status. You knew you'd refuse. You planned this whole thing. We hoped for it, Doyen corrected. We didn't know for sure. Hoping and knowing are different things. Belnash looked out at the stars. I'm afraid of your species. I want you To know that you saved us, and I'm grateful, but I'm also terrified of what you represent. What do we represent? Violence, chaos, unpredictability. Everything we tried to move past when we formed the council. You're a reminder that civilization is fragile, that peace is temporary, that safety is an illusion. Yes, Doyen said simply, and that doesn't bother you. It bothers me very much, Diane said. I'd prefer to live in your galaxy, one where species cooperate, where wars are ancient history, where children grow up safe. But that's not reality. Reality is that bad things happen and someone needs to be ready for them. So humans are what? The galaxy's warriors, its protectors. We are the galaxy's pessimists, Doyen said. We prepare for the worst and hope for the best. If the best happens, great, we wasted some effort being ready for nothing. If the worst happens, at least someone is prepared. Bell Nash was quiet for a long time. I spoke with some council historians. They found something interesting in our archives. What's that? There were 3 other species like yours, aggressive, warlike, constantly fighting. The council encountered them thousands of years ago. What happened to them? They destroyed themselves, Velesh said. Without exception, species that couldn't move past violence eventually turned it on themselves. That's why the council ranks peaceful species higher, because historically, violent species don't last. But we're still here, Diane pointed out. Yes, that's what frightens me. You're the first violent species to survive long enough to reach the stars. We don't know what that means. It means we learned, Doyen said. We're still violent, we're still dangerous, but we learn to control it, direct it, use it only when necessary. That's the difference between us and those other species. They couldn't stop fighting. We can. We just choose not to forget how. 3 months later, human advisors were stationed across council space. They taught basic combat skills, backup procedures, manual operations. Some council members embraced the lessons. Others resisted, insisting their advanced technology was sufficient. Commander Han Taeyeon ran training exercises for council security forces. He watched them struggle with basic tactics, weapons that required aim rather than smart targeting operations. Without computer assistance, you're all going to die if another attack comes, Taeyeon said bluntly to his students. Not because you're not smart or brave, but because you forgot how to do things the hard way. Our technology will improve. One student insisted. We'll develop defenses against corrupting attacks. Probably, Tunan agreed. And then the next enemy will have something that breaks those defenses. Technology is always leapfrogging. You know what doesn't change? A person with a gun and the will to use it. He demonstrated with an ancient rifle. This is 300 years old. Still works, never needs updates, can't be hacked. It's reliable because it's simple. It's also slow and inaccurate, the student pointed out. At long range, yes, but most fights happen close, and up close this is plenty accurate. T-Jun smiled. Besides, accuracy doesn't matter if your fancy plasma rifle won't fire because the enemy hit you with a virus. The students practiced, slowly learning that older methods had value. Some would remember these lessons, some wouldn't. Tun hoped enough would remember when it mattered. Dr. Beck Jiwon gave a lecture to council weapons researchers. She'd brought examples of human weapons from stone tools to nuclear missiles. This is human military development, she said, gesturing to the display. 10,000 years of figuring out how to kill each other efficiently. Notice something. The researchers studied the timeline. You never abandon old technology. 1. Observed, you still use knives alongside laser weapons. Exactly. Jiwon said, because sometimes a knife is the right tool, sometimes a missile is, sometimes you need a rock. We keep everything because we never know what we'll need, but maintaining all that equipment must be expensive.